All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. We're going to start with a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
Please
and
join
justice
me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform, being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of November 14th, 2022 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions, comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2022-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 6, 2022, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Prisoner Keith, Cole, here, Hodge,
here.
McHugh,
Here.
Neff, here, Rodriguez.
I just want to make note before we started that Councilman Rodriguez's absence is due to a pre-scheduled medical procedure. I'm happy to say that it was successful. Goes without saying, we're all happy to hear that, and we are wishing him a speedy recovery. We are going to start with a presentation on the 3rd Street Trail. Mr. Olson?
Yep.
Mr. City, are you joining?
We need to say 220 Cambridge Avenue.
You come up as close as you can.
We haven't seen, we think you have the packets that were sent around. Okay, great. So we're gonna go through 4 quick points. The first one is exactly what the area we're talking about, just to be clear on that. I think everybody here knows the area. Betsy can't see it, but Betsy, you know where the area is. We walked through there. And then so there's the 3rd Street Trail in yellow connecting from 3rd Street to the baseball fields. And then you'll see that little purple kind of hook in there. That's where we're talking about putting a pollinator garden. We did the first one we did the first plan with Zoe Arhanic. She came here before council in the spring. Did the second one with Kevin Medro. That was in October. And while we were in there digging around, we were going to plant some trees, and we found a lot of asphalt and cement. Just a little history. I don't have the history down perfectly, but we think that area was once Lovett's Nursery.
Dump, you're done.
It was Lovett's Nursery, and it was the dump for Lovett's Nursery. We don't know when it made its way to the borough, but when we went in there to, a certain part of it, when we went to dig to plant trees in October, we got about this far down, and then we would hit asphalt or chunks of cement. And then there are chunks of cement and asphalt sticking out of some of the hills, some of the edges there. So, and it kind of makes sense. The land is flat, and then it's elevated, and then it goes flat and goes out to William Street, right? And so that hump, we think, is just an old dump of asphalt and cement. So we couldn't plant trees there. We had to pivot on October 23rd and dig out some area and plant some trees that were targeted for up on that hill. There's another hill in there that we assume is more of that asphalt and cement. So can we do something with that? And one of the thoughts, a great thought from Bonnie Tercifia would be, could we put a pollinator garden in there? So the second thing I wanted to talk about is what exactly is a pollinator garden?
Well, so the beauty of these native plants is that they are very, very resilient. They're used to growing here. That's what we would use. The plants are native to New Jersey, and that helps our pollinators, our bees and butterflies and beetles, and all the important insects that are in crisis right now. I mean, they're dying worldwide because of habitat loss, pesticide use. So it's really important that we put in pockets of pollinator gardens to protect them, because if we don't, we're gonna be in real trouble, because that's where our food comes from, our plants, everything's, based on these little pollinators. So anyway, this kind of presented itself. We have all these trees planted, and then we have this hill that's just kind of unsightly. So we started pulling out some of the weeds, and the dirt wasn't too bad. And we thought, well, we could plant, some plants in there. So I asked a landscape designer from Huber Woods Environmental Center, who is versed in pollinator gardens and native plants, and he came over to look at the site, and I said, so what do? We have all these weeds. And he said, well, you need to kill the weeds first. And he said, cardboard is a great alternative instead of putting plastic or spraying pesticides, which we did not want to do. And I thought, well, we do have a lot of cardboard in town, because I've been over dropping my stuff at the recycling center. So the beauty of cardboard is that it blocks the sun, it kills whatever's underneath it. It also is biodegradable, so it will break down. I mean, it's something that people that compost use, they put their vegetables and then they put leaves or cardboard in to be the brown half of the composting. So it's a natural, it breaks down. And so we have started adding cardboard to the site. And then we also would like to improve the soil quality. So one of the things we're asking for is that when DPW collects the leaves off the streets, if they could divert them over and give us them to put down on top of the cardboard to enrich the soil and improve it better before we start planting in the spring.
So again, if you look at the map, you see the brush grinding area. And then if you go west, you see where we would, this proposed pollinator garden. Right now, the amount of cardboard that's down there is roughly about 5,000 square feet. That's all we've done. And we put that put the cardboard down to take out some of those invasive species, which include, correct me, the garlic, mustard, the Oriental bittersweet,
Mugwort,
the mugwort,
ivy, the English ivy, there's a lot of things.
English ivy, the Oriental bittersweet, and then the one that got on my hands.
The multiflora rose.
No, not
The
multiflora.
mile minute. There's a lot of invasives.
No,
I
but
think.
the poison hemlock.
Oh, the poison
You
hemlock.
had me at mugwort.
So we got to get all that stuff out of there. So we put the cardboard down now. The reason that we're here is we really need a blessing from you to contact the DPW and say, could you dump a couple loads of the leaves that you pick up from the street instead of those shipping those out to, I don't know where they go, Cold Snack, do a couple of huge loads so we can get somewhere around 60 to 100 yards of leaves dumped on there, put that on top of the cardboard, and that will help smother this, and then we'll let it sit. And then in the spring, we'd like to get some dirt in there. We may be able to get some dirt now. We're negotiating for that with the environmental committee. They said they would fund some of that. So put some dirt on there in March. And then Bonnie and people that understand pollinators will get some plugs, plant those in April. And then hopefully we'll have some things we'll catch. You think some stuff will grow?
Yes, hopefully we will.
And then we're gonna have 2 hurdles that we're gonna hit in April, May. We're gonna need water right now. The first project we did was Zoe Arhanic. A lot of manual labor from people in this room. We're hauling water in there and watering the trees that were planted. This one that we did in the fall, we were blessed with the residents. Michelle Decker, who lives over on 3rd Street. We've taken 500 feet of 600 feet of hose from her faucet, turned the faucet on and watered all those trees. So much easier than what we were doing in the summer. But when we get this pollinator garden installed in April, we're going to start to need water in May, June, and then we're really going to need it in latter part of June, July, August, September.
I mean, if
But
the
if
beauty
we're,
of the
I was gonna say, but if we have to haul that in, it's gonna be tough. If we have a hose or a source of water, not on here, but if you look down at Hendrickson and you draw a line from the western point of Hendrickson, work your way around the baseball fields and go to where the Third Street Trail ends, that yellow line. That's, according to Google Maps, that's 485 feet. So is it possible for us to extend 485 feet and install the same thing that we did over by the community gardens that, what do you always call it?
Well,
Fountain.
there's water at the community gardens, but there's also a water dispenser to refill water bottles over at the rec center.
Yeah, but it's that device, if we had that device over here at the end of the Third Street Trail, we would still need a water source, probably from Hendrickson, because that's 485 feet. We know if we go from Third Street, it's just under 1,000 feet. And if you go from Third Street, you're gonna have to go under all those trees and all those roots, and it's gonna be very hard to dig. You go from Hendrickson and go over to here, get a water source there at the end of the Third Street Trail. We just pull a faucet up at the end of that, at the back side of that, and pull the hoses out, and we can water this whole area.
But the beauty is the thought of combining it with, right next to the baseball fields, those two baseball fields have a water bottle refill station there. So you bring the water into the fields and that serves all the kids, and we won't have all the Gatorade bottles and all the plastic all over the place. But, you know, we can tap into that. Yeah, so it serves two purposes. It helps us out to water this new area that we hope will just continue to grow. And, you know, although native plants eventually do not need extra water or irrigation, any little baby with tiny roots needs to be taken care of at the beginning. So they will need water the first year or so. And the trees too, because their roots have been compromised by being put in pots and all that, so.
And then, so that's, we're not talking to you about the water today, we're just bringing it up. We're not asking for the council's blessing. And then the next hurdle that we know we're gonna have is we're going to need to encircle that area, that 5,000 square feet. The fencing companies can be too expensive. We have enough volunteers. I think we just put posts in the ground, staple up some fencing. We're gonna have to go 8 feet high to prevent another invasive species from eating those pollinators, the deer. The deer are gonna
We have
get
a
hungry.
small little practice garden that I planted there to see, but I think, what, a dozen came in while we were there today?
You're
Just-
exaggerating.
You're talking about fencing just around the new pollinator garden or
Just
is it
just
your-
so
No,
it gets
just the pollinator garden.
established.
Yeah.
I mean, I am planning on choosing plants that are deer resistant. But,
When the deer get hungry, I don't know.
I mean, the plants that in my yard were left untouched, or in other people's yards, or, you know, doing research. I just don't know, those deer are fed and encouraged, they're very friendly, they don't, you know, they're just make themselves at home. So I don't know if they'll just camp out and eat everything in sight, I'm not for sure. So we just have to protect them, you know, and nothing elaborate, just something that would keep them off. Chance.
So all we need tonight would be a blessing from you guys to contact the DPW and ask them to dump 60 to 100 yards of
Or
leaves.
schedule, just, you know,
Schedule,
whatever the next,
however
I know
they can
they,
do it.
yeah, they already came through once, I don't know, I assume that went. Right, they picked up once.
Yes,
DPW.
yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, if
Dumper.
perhaps on the next scheduled pickup, I don't know when that is, it could maybe.
Now, access wise, how far, I mean, we're talking about rear packers, they put these leaves in. Where exactly do you want the rear packer to dump the leaves? I mean,
If they could dump it right here, this side would be,
Well,
otherwise it's this side, and we would, if they can bring it all the way in,
Well, can they
great.
drive a truck across? Can they drive a truck on this side? or-
Depends on what kind of, how big the packer is. I mean,
What if they came in through the DPW site?
How about
and
the
dumped it
brush?
at the top of the hill?
The brush driving?
If
I don't
they
know,
want
can
to-
they
I
go
mean,
down
brush
there?
garden.
Can they
I don't
back
think they
down?
can get around the berms.
Maybe they
the
can.
berms are gonna be
I
a
haven't-
problem
They'd
there.
have to break through the berms. But I don't know that I don't know how big the trucks are that, what they would be. They have what do they call the small truck that takes about 4 yards?
A
of-
gator,
What?
a gator. No,
I
they
don't
were
know. Maybe that's it.
What's the
And
vacuum?
see, they pick them up and they go right into the rear packer when they pick them up.
Yeah.
And the leaf back, that might be a little bit more of a possibility.
That's what, they were just discussing.
I'll email,
Put that thing on reverse.
you know, the DPW and see if they can meet you out there. Do you think that you say 5,000 square feet of leaves, or 5,000 square foot area you want to cover with leaves? I'm thinking, I'd have to ask Rich how many truckloads that would be, but I don't think it's much more than a rear packer full, quite frankly.
I think Dave's, I thought it was Dave Carl said he thought that was, I can't remember if he said 30 to 50, so I think it's 2 loads.
Okay. He thought you'd be 30 to 50, because they're 30.
No, 30, 50 is in the truck, and he thought it would be 2 loads, 30, 50, that gets you to 60 to 100. And I'm saying, and leaves are light, so if they can be dropped in place and we wheelbarrow them in a yard at a time, that's not that hard. That's 60 to 100 wheelbarrows. That's nothing for Bonnie. She does that.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah.
Funny out of the box questions. Does the leaf vac work in reverse? Can you spray it with that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
It just dumps.
Wow, that would be nice.
So, and we have smaller vehicles that could access the trail. Is that part of the discussion?
The problem is with the pickup, they're already in the rear packer and, they pack them down. About getting them out of the rear packer, it just dumps. Dumping into a smaller one might be problematic. Practically speaking, I'll have to talk to Rich and
Yeah.
Rick and see, what may work, but just off the top of my head, you
Is
every,
it appropriate?
yeah.
We also have those, the leaf bags that we authorized a year or 2 ago. The lawnmowers come through. Ride along lawnmowers and they
Oh,
have
like
leaf
the-
collections, yeah, that. We bought those like a year or 2 ago because they were replaced. So when they're doing the leaf cleanups in the fields, they could, if it's a yard or,
So you drag it down. the field.
no, it's an attachment to the lawnmowers
Okay.
in the back. I don't think we have many, but they're going through doing the leaves in the fields. They could just drive the leaf or the lawnmowers.
Yeah.
Whatever's.
Through there.
Whatever's the easiest for them, it doesn't matter.
Are there not enough leaves in the woods that just fell that you could?
No.
So if you've noticed,
not-
all those trees are covered in ivy and vines, and
Okay.
there are not a lot of, a lot of them are dead.
Right.
Especially in this
Yeah,
area,
This area's open.
that's,
You would, it's a good question, though.
it is a good question.
I
To
mean,
that point too, I think we should be somewhat judicious with what leaves we take. We take the leaves from our parks, like Carter Park, the beautiful oak trees.
Right? Better
Get those leaves instead of bringing in, if people have English ivy in their
Although
brush.
those leaves should be left by those folks who nourish
They
them
do want to
in
stay.
McCarter.
Don't get Bonnie started.
I know.
And I think they just
Sure.
cleaned up McCarter, but
That would be perfect if we just got updates, but honestly, I think if we had that, depth on top of that cardboard, that just smothers all of those invasives. And then. we
It
put
would
the
be ideal
dirt
not
on
to get
whatever,
ivy,
yeah.
though. We do not want anything,
But it's not gonna be
Is-
perfect. It's not
is-
gonna be.
Is there a thought that, again, I don't know how this would work, if we need to truck things in, but those giant brown paper bags that people fill with leaves?
Mhm.
If we handed bags out and residents filled them up and we
That,
put those
I
in?
love that idea, and I think that's something that we should be doing in the future. But for this one, we need to, the window of leaves,
We need to expedite.
yeah, we have now
Unless
until,
everybody's
what do you
raking
tell me, when
tomorrow.
did this?
Yeah,
We
pick
go
up through December.
December, yeah, so
Okay.
we've got it, now is like.
Right, so I guess it's really just a question of what vehicles can we get in there, and can they haul enough leaves in there
Yeah.
to meet the need?
Do you think the leaves in the cardboard will break down in the spring? long does it
Or,
take?
I mean, even if they don't, they then provide mulch, their natural mulch,
plant right
so
down?
you can just
Put dirt on
dig a
top of it.
hole. I mean, that's the beauty, the cardboard will be there, but it'll be wet, and so you can just dig a hole off the plant in, and then it has mulch on
It'll
top.
take the summertime for that to decay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cardboard, you took the non-glossy cardboard, only compostable?
I took all the tape off, all of it, and
Tape,
stickers,
Aw.
And all the
and staples.
the staples were top.
I have no fingernails left. Done.
Any
Yeah,
other
we-
questions?
Well, I just think it's a great project. I'd like to see it facilitated. I don't know if there's a foreman perhaps, or maybe Dave. This is sort of like an on the ground, solve it situation. I personally love what's happening over there. I love that it involves everyone in this community who cares about the same sort of thing. I love that the trees survived the drought because everybody was helping. And you've had to pivot and figure it out. And in the end, we're going to get this incredible new, well, it's always been there perhaps, but you're restoring something to it. It's better than what it was.
It's encouraging because we spent a lot of time up there digging and pulling, and all the passersby, I mean, there's every sort of person, and they're all like, thank you so much, and thank you for, so it really does seem to be embraced by the community, and not just Fairhaven. Everybody comes to this park and walks their dogs because it's such a great place. So
Do I have a motion to approve based on the work as described, minus the water and the fencing that you described?
Can I just ask a question,
Yes,
since I handle insurance?
sure.
With the pollinator and the bees, where is this going to be located? And is there going to be signage? I'm afraid somebody who's allergic to bees or has some reaction is going to get stung, and then we're going to be handled with claims.
Bees are sort of
So,
everywhere.
I know there's a lot of, this is kind of up on the hill. It's the hill that leads up to the brush pine site. So up until this point, I don't think many people.
You have to
walk
Should
that.
I be able to access
Yeah,
it?
I mean,
Just wanna make
the
sure.
path is
Yeah.
here and this is removed.
Just
But
like
in actuality, like bees, like little bumblebees and things, they are really not the stinging bees. And I mean, unless you're gonna come in there and this or something, I don't know if there's a big worry about wasps and all. I think,
I love the idea though in the future of maybe a sign, just letting people know
Don't
what it
push
is.
the
I
bees.
don't think it's the worst idea in the
No,
world.
it's a great idea.
And we are replacing one hazard with another, with the warhogs or all those poison.
Mugwort.
Sorry about that. Hogwarts?
You're getting there.
Harry Potter?
I'll make a motion to support the Third Street Trail as proposed and discussed here this evening. And add my thanks and appreciation.
I'll send an email to DPW. with the
All in
details.
favor? Anyone opposed?
Copy you guys.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Make sure you're working on that area.
Moving along, workshop session 2023, council, student government council meeting. Allison.
I know we set our meetings for 2023. I reached out to the school to bring back the Marchese meeting where we have student government. Prior to COVID, they wanted to get away from the November, December dates, and they had requested spring, and then COVID had come by. So March 27th, 2023 is the best date for them at 1:30. I gave them a bunch, about 5 or 6 dates.
Well, that's during the day? Oh, I
1:30
like that.
at Norwood.
That's a good one.
So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, mark your calendars. That's the only change that we made.
So with that, moving along, Fairhaven Library Structure and Audit, Teresa.
Yes, myself, Allison, Borough Attorney Greg Cannon, and our auditor, John Swisher, have had a series of meetings to take a look at the Borough of Fairhaven's much beloved library and the structure, in so much as that there are several different types of libraries that are codified in the state of New Jersey. There's either municipal, joint municipal, county, and then association libraries. Fairhaven's library falls in kind of a gray area, and our intent is to make sure that we can leave what's good about the library good that we all love, but make sure that we're following at least proper rules for how our libraries form. And technically, association libraries, which for the most part, we felt Fairhaven Library was, are nonprofit entities, and they have a board of directors, but not because they're an association library, because they're really 501c3s. So what we are looking at, and Greg can go into this in a little more detail, is taking a look at our library structure, making sure that we move forward under one of the state statutes, and then work with our auditor to do an audit, which we haven't done in a long time, come back with some recommendations on internal controls for the library, and then meet with ahead of time with the library board of trustees and talk about, you know, how we actually want to formulate or familiarize ourselves with where our library falls for the state. I'll let Greg expand on that, but that's my Reader's Digest version of.
Yeah, I mean, essentially your library, obviously you guys provide great library services to your residents. They not only can go to the Monmouth County Library, but they can come to their own local library. In order to go to the Monmouth County Library, you're required by law to contribute a third of a mil in property taxes, which is a fancy way of saying about 3%. So, you know, the trick is making sure that the library here is funded and continues the way it is in the same rubric, but also maintaining the membership in the Monmouth County Library without creating any tax for the residents. And so in terms of what residents would see with respect to the library and the library services they receive, there's really, we don't intend really any change at all. It's really just making sure that we have the paperwork in correctly so that we're following the state library law. It's not uncommon. This is a very, we'll say ancient, but it's the library law is very old. For example, I don't know if many of you guys know this, but what books you take out of the library is equally as protected as your medical information for obvious reasons in a democracy. And so there's very specific rules that apply to the library. Many towns, including my own, I served on the library board in my town 10 years ago and did the same kind of project. We have a joint library and found a solution there where our residents can go to, we actually joined the Middlesex counties around the border, which is just closer. But it's fundamentally the same thing here. We need to get the paperwork in order to make sure we have everyone on the right payroll, financial controls in place, and things like that. Because over the years, in some place, the library is the place people usually pay the least amount of attention to in the government. Fire department's pretty obvious. You know, have fire trucks, you got a big problem, but the library doesn't always get a lot of attention. So we're going to give it the attention it needs to make sure it continues the way it is, and that we don't have any issues going forward.
We pay our library tax to the county, which like Greg said, does allow our residents to be part of the library system, the Monmouth County Library System, and Monmouth County Library System gives back to the borough. They provide us with allocations for books and internet and other resources, a children's librarian. So part of what the Fairhaven residents pay Monmouth County comes back to help our local library. The only expenses directly the borough has for the library are the employees. And that's where it gets a little, gray, because if they are a 501(c)(3), the board of directors would actually, they become employees of that entity, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So we're looking at what our options are. The county's more than willing to work with us to explain the funding formula and how they give back to the borough a share of what we send out there. So it's a starting to be a work in progress. We anticipate, there's no secret that our library director, Donna, who is a wealth of historical knowledge of the library, is looking to retire sometime in the second half of 2023. So getting all of this worked out before she leaves is important because her institutional knowledge there is invaluable. So we want to move forward with a lot of this while she's still our employee.
Yeah,
Do you anticipate, a couple quick questions, Mayor, if it's all right? Sure. Do you anticipate an increase in cost? Which the library is an essential aspect of civic life. I feel fortunate to have a local library as well as access to the county library. Do you anticipate an increase in cost next year?
No, really, like I said, there will be any change in library services. Oh, this happened in many towns. I mean, you can look right next door to Red Bank where the Eisners donated the land, and it's kind of, I don't want to say bizarre, but it's a unorthodox setup, and that's not uncommon in all of these small, especially the older towns like Fairhaven and Red Bank, where it was really a public, philanthropic endeavor when it started, 50, 70 years ago, and has evolved with the law and the Constitution that came in 47. We're in contact with the State Library Association. Our auditor has contacted them. They're the experts in setting this up, and frankly, they're kind of like, I don't know if you're Game of Thrones fan, but they're like was it Old Town? Yeah, the Meisters or whatever. They know how to do this. I worked with them 10 years ago in Aberdeen, and they're the keepers of all the laws and the books, literally, no pun intended. And so it's really a reorganization to make sure things are allocated correctly, make sure we're getting the most amount of money out of the county and the other availabilities. The Library Association also provides funding, and making sure that we're really on the up and up, and determining really who has the authority and what everyone's roles are. The library board has been mostly advisory to date, but that they may have more powers than we thought they had. But getting that all in order so we get all the money in here so we don't increase the cost is really the goal. But in terms of what the public sees, in terms of who's here, how the library functions, is all going to remain the same. It's really an accounting issue, which is why we're in with the auditor.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Good. We're going to move along to small ticket capital. Teresa?
Yes, as we mentioned at our last meeting, as we do annually this time of year, we look for small ticket capital requests from our department heads. And just for the public's knowledge, and certainly our governing body is aware, in Fairhaven, we fund capital two ways. We fund it either through a bond authorization, and we issue debt to pay them. And we keep those for large purchases, whether they're buildings or fire trucks or things that certainly are far in excess of $100,000, and we pay them off via debt. The governing body has traditionally funded in our budget annually $215,000 in what we call pay-as-you-go capital, meaning we're directly funding it, so we don't issue debt for it. And we use that for smaller capital purchases. Capital has a lifespan of 5 years, and it has to cost at least $5,000. So at this time of year, we ask for requests from our department heads. We generally discuss it with the governing body at a workshop meeting, and then we put a following resolution on an agenda. When the governing body authorizes the budget and they authorize the capital purchase, we just do it in a lump sum. But they have a further ability to approve that in this process annually. So you'll see I put the request for each department in your packet. The police are looking for $30,000. Motor vehicle readers, car computers, copy machine, and long guns. Public Works is looking for $60,000, pickup truck, snow plow, a loader, snow pusher, and a scan tool for the mechanics bay. Parks and Rec asks for $70,000 from the Carter Park bike playground. They do have a $35,000 grant for that. This would be in addition to it. I did point out in my comment section of the spreadsheet that Parks does have prior authorization from bond ordinances. We have one that was done in 2017-07, which was originally $100,000. There's $12,338 balance left in that. And last year in 2022-10, the governing body also authorized $50,000 for various parks and field improvements. Fire department has no request this year. Borough Hall, as everyone I think noticed, we did our flooring upstairs in phase 1. We're looking for phase 2 flooring for down here. Certainly council chambers and the hallways and the back area upstairs by the steps. And then we do have several areas where we need to we do repairs, sheetrock repairs, and painting. That's an estimate, but I'm waiting on final quotes. Office Emergency Management is looking for $20,000 for a signboard. You see them around town. They have a certain life expectancy and they're very useful, and the chief would like another one. So that would those total altogether are $225,000. I did discuss this with the Finance Committee at our meeting. There was some thought they wanted to keep the annual authorization to at or below the 215 that is in the annual budget. I'll throw it up to the governing body or will anyone to weigh in. I certainly can answer any question. I put the request from the department heads also in your packet. And I also showed you that in what we call the budgeted capital, the annual capital allocation. Over the series of years, our current balance is 586,118 in available budgeted capital. Now, keep it in mind, you would never want to bring that down to zero because it also allows you to plan for emergencies. If you had something that came in that was a capital emergency, for whatever reason, there might be, it does happen. You could have a pipe break, in the middle of a road project. The governing body has used it in the past to expand, sometimes a change order for a road project, and we need to be kind of, where we're gonna get the capital. So they generally like to keep a balance in there that gives them flexibility throughout the year, but to make decisions and have money available.
Go ahead, absolutely.
I just wanted to add on to what Teresa said, since she discussed this with members of the finance. I do agree with Teresa's observation that as far as parks and recreation, we already have about $62,000 in prior authorizations and a balance of another ordinance. I think that we should reconsider that $70,000 that is here, allocated here, and have essentially Parks and Rec use what they have already available rather than add 70,000 additional to that. We're going to have a tough budget this coming year. I think with incoming inflation and all the other costs we're going to be facing. If you just look at the other costs, public works and police, I would say those are need to have to the degree that Parks and Recreation already has. Over 68,000 on balance. I would suggest we strike the 70,000 from these amounts. That would be my suggestion from a finance committee perspective.
So that's where I was going. I agree with you, Councilwoman. My question was going to be, is that customarily the type of thing that would be on small ticket capital?
You can, I put a synopsis in of what's been done by department in the past. It varies, year to year, but generally speaking, small ticket capital are usually things that you could touch in your hand. You know what I mean? You can pick them up. You could, like, whether it's if I look at last year's, you have based by department, similar requests from PD and DPW than they did this year. They did salt spreaders and line striping machines, lawn equipment, loader claws. Police department did stun guns, cameras, alpha test machine. Last year, the Parks and Rec did the community center playground equipment for $60,000. And then fire department had radio equipment, and Borough Hall had phase one of the hall that the flooring project that we already talked about. So it varies through the years, but generally speaking, the governing body.
So I agree with you, Councilwoman. I also just fundamentally, looking at the Borough Hall estimate as well, I just want to make a point. I really appreciate in the future, if we're gonna approve small ticket capital, we should have the number. It shouldn't be we're waiting on estimates. If I'm a vendor and I watch a meeting and I know that they approved $45,000 for something, I'm going to bid $44,999. And I know that there's multiple bids and they have to bid against each other, but for them to know what they can bid up to, I don't think that that's optimal for
In
us.
this case, there wouldn't be bids. They would be state contract. That's how we did the flooring this time. So the price is already prefixed by the state awarded the bid already.
Sure.
So I'm really just waiting, and I plan to have it by the next meeting. Our Jared Okerson, who does our buildings and grounds, has a couple follow-ups with the state contract vendors for both flooring and for painting. So it would not be traditionally like we go out for bid and we get 2 or 3 bids and we take the lowest one. That's not the case. When you go state contract, the price is fixed already.
I understand. That's change orders though. You build it out to the ceiling, not to the floor. So I'm just saying in the future, I think we need to have numbers, not we're waiting on estimates when it comes to this stuff.
I have a question on 2017-07. You said that we have a balance of $12,338, which is authorized for various parks and fields. Does that mean the money is sitting in an account and is available, or that it can be drawn?
It's a prior bond authorization, and out of the $100,000, we spent all but that amount.
Right, but so the money is
available.
available. Okay, and then is that the same as well for the 50,000
Yes.
as
Yes.
well?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you, I'm not as concerned about the 2017, the 2022-10. What was that for?
It was $50,000 for various parks and fields improvements. I think if you recall, Meg, I think originally there was some thought that we were going to ask for another $100,000, and the governing body did bring it down to 50 when we
That's
did the
right.
bond limits.
That's right. Okay. I was trying to make sense of those numbers. Go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you. A big picture, while I appreciate information and it's always good to have it as soon as possible, I feel as though we're looking at this a little bit in a vacuum. And like Councilwoman Neff said, we can anticipate some higher costs in the 2023 budget. There are things that are just going to be higher than they have been in the past. So I can't say I'm comfortable with this because I'm not sure of yet what the big picture is going to look like. But with that in mind, I had a couple of other more granular, and I don't know when you're going to be looking for us to respond to this, but in any kind of formal resolution, but I wouldn't want to, or ordinance, I wouldn't want to do that until we have the other information. Just want to make that understood. The couple quick things. Does Public Works have a water truck?
Yes, they would like to.
Okay. The bicycle park that's being contemplated by the rec department, have we had a chance to talk about that as a governing body workshop? And part of why I'm asking that, I'll explain, is cool project. I don't think we've had a chance to talk about it, where it would go, although I understand where people are contemplating it to go. What are the impacts? Is that the best place for it? Is there specifically, have we thought about what that's going to do, the trees in that area? Is there a better place for it? These are questions I don't have the answers to. I just wonder if that's been vetted or discussed.
I know that it's been discussed with the rec committee. They've looked at this multiple times. They've met on site with.
But not at the governing body.
I brought those comments up, Tracy.
Yeah.
And during
I'm sorry.
the meeting, and they, still don't know an exact location, but mirror your concerns for the trees, paving the asphalt. Was that due to the system? Is that the best place?
So I can hopefully add some color to those questions. The initial intention was to have the bike playground to be almost like a winding path. So it wasn't going to be, it was going to be maybe a 4-foot or something of that nature path that would wind around the trees, maybe it's figure 8, something like that, that had road-like features for the kids to become familiar with in terms of riding their bikes, fun opportunities, scooters, whatever it is. In the what we call the Dust Bowl over at McCarter Park, somewhere between the basketball court and the fence. It's very dusty and there is space there where there's no trees. What ended up happening is when we were looking at the design and engineering aspects of everything, it became clear that doing a free form was going to be more complicated. And it was recommended that we go with a more like a pad of space, a large sort of rectangular or some shape that was all connected, and then use more painted lines and then try to add features as we were able. So that is, I believe Teresa is headed toward Rich's desk or is on it now. Tracy, I know you and I have had some conversations about whether that should be in a planner space as
Or
well.
design. Yeah.
Right, and maybe both, I don't know. But I am certain the rec committee is open to feedback. Obviously, their advisory, providing the suggestions and information. I think it's a great project. It's just a matter of fine tuning.
I think it's a cool idea and it's a lot of fun. I think it's appropriate for a town like Fairhaven. But where I'm coming from is, I don't want to derail what's actually on our agenda here, but I'm looking at it as a capital improvement It's going to be with us for a while if we take good care of it, we do it properly. To me, I think that needs to come here for a level of deliberation and some direction, or that's all. I'm saying.
And to your point noted, there was a lot of back and forth on whether or not we were gonna be able to design this in-house with what Rich had on his plate, or they were gonna use an outside engineering firm. We did get quotes from CMA, who are our engineers, to actually design it. And the rec committee was more desirous of hopefully letting it go on Rich's plate. He only just met out there probably 3 weeks or so ago with BJ. He hasn't designed it yet, Tracy. So the bottom line is,
Well, nor should he, right? Have we authorized this?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if I may comment, this comment is the same comment that I made when this idea first came up. I believe that we should keep our parks natural, and there is something to be thought about over designing our parks. I know some parts of McCarter Park are not being used or not, there's no grass growing, but that doesn't mean that it's not valuable as it is, as part of nature. And I personally believe that that is something maybe better for maybe more of a town. I don't know that I'm a fan of the idea for it from McCarter Park, or maybe somewhere else in town. I just think that we should not necessarily try to over design every piece of land we have. There's, it's nice to have just quiet nature sometimes. It's just I'm just repeating what I said before, so it's pretty much that's the perspective I come from. I also think from a needs perspective, this is not a needs project for Fairhaven, and we have a very heavy load of needs, including the DPW, our police station, Bicentennial Hall, numerous other projects. So I would just say that I could see, if the community is hugely in favor of this, I will say fine, but I'm not convinced that it is where we should not necessarily be allocating our funds. That's just my personal perspective on this.
I think of a variety of points of view, which would demonstrate a lack of consensus at this time. My last, but quickly, we have one signboard, and we anticipate, meaning I think it's in another 4 years. It has a 10-year life, I believe, according to the notes. So I think we have another 4 years on the signboard is great. My question is, do we need 2 at the same time, or can we push this expense a year so that we're planned? We should not be without the signboard. I agree with the chief. It's important and useful.
he only has one signboard right now. It was purchased in 2018. He's looking to bring a second one in.
All right, but it has okay. So in 10 years, it'll be 2020. So it's 2022. It has a 10-year life, I believe.
Right, but his point is, he's telling you that this one purchase will have a 10-year life. He currently has one that was purchased in 18. He's looking to get 2 signboards in town.
Because he thinks we need 2
Yes.
at one time.
Yes.
Okay. And lastly, Borough Hall. $45,000, and just step back for a second and say, what do we really need to do here at Borough Hall if we were going to spend $45,000? And maybe we've already been down this road and I just don't know it, but removing these posts and running a header to distribute the load more widely so we can see each other, to me, would be far more important than new carpet. So $45,000 could actually potentially achieve that, at least one header, maybe not all, maybe 3, but I just leave that in the way of feedback. I don't know why these items have been given priority, the rug and the sheetrock and the painting, but
Only because it was, when we talked about it last year, we did phase 1, when we did small ticket capital last year, did the upstairs floor. We didn't, the governing body at that time did not want to do it all at once. And so, this and the hallway and the up and the back stairs, piece would be consistent flooring what went in upstairs.
could we look at this?
That would be a structural engineering consideration. It's been talked about before. She's not here right now. I think Betsy Koch talked about the fact that, you could put in steel girders and take out these
Yeah.
pillars and stuff. Not my area of expertise, but at the time, I thought she had said, $100 grand or so to do it,
Well,
only because she, has experience in that.
I am here.
Bessie, we can.
Councilman, we're having trouble hearing you. Do you, when do we have to approve small ticket capital requests? Just by the last meeting of this year?
I am here.
Hi, Matt.
If we wanted to pull 2 of these and approve the rest and then
Can you hear me?
revisit them at a future meeting, is that?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's not that school.
Can't hear me.
You can.
All right, never mind.
No,
I
go ahead,
just-
go ahead.
Never mind.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I don't think she can hear us, maybe.
I mean, I do want to say I support the idea of trying to figure out a way to take out a couple of these columns. I mean, I think part of the reason this might be here is because before we were looking at Bicentennial Hall as a potential place for us to go to and essentially expand the funds there to make it where we want to have council meetings. I think since then, I'm not sure if we took a vote on that, but I think we are more leaning towards staying here, right? If that's the decision, then we should put in the money, consider putting in the money to make improvements. But I'm not clear that we made a decision. Do we make a decision? We're gonna stay here for council meetings?
In your opinion, I don't think we made that formal decision, but I think we made a decision not to put as much money into Bicentennial Hall based on how the plans were presented to us at the time.
And there was a discussion of removal of the dais, of the
Right.
flexible.
Right, and I think we tried
Portable
out, I
bags.
mean, there, it was my view that the setting was not as conducive to a meeting, was very loud. Compared to, I think this is more conducive to a meeting other than the visuals here. But I think we should think about that.
Yeah,
And then maybe at that point, we can, I would agree, maybe delay these improvements on carpets, whatever, until we make a decision. And then maybe-
That's my question, is do you see them independent of each other? Or do you think we should make one decision at the same
Not if
time?
you're gonna put brand new carpets and then do this. I think the order will be the opposite, right?
If you look at the floor, it looks like the carpet goes around the pillars.
Yeah, I mean.
So if we pull them out, we're gonna have to fix, or we'll
Yeah.
have squares.
Yeah, but that's,
I think we need to make a decision whether we want to stay here. And,
could we get a cost? Could we get an estimate? Do we have someone within our own personnel? I think it'd be worth it.
I think you're gonna need a structural engineer, but we certainly can get an
Maybe
estimate.
we could look into what that might cost so that we can decide if it would be worth.
Or an architect, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You could tie it to the other renovations
Yes.
that you're looking at.
So what are we doing?
So for now, I would ask if someone wants to make a motion to approve the
I don't even
Small
want to,
ticket
because
capital.
I'll put in the resolution, just tell me what you want in the resolution. next,
Police,
go ahead.
Public
Police.
Works, Office of Emergency Management, 30, 60, and 20, correct?
That's fine.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just want to call out too that fire first aid have a purchase coming up. You know, DPW said to me, we have old trucks, they're 15 years old. They have their fire police truck is 30 years old. And you know, I think we could all learn something from the fire department and how tightly they spend their money and try to save and budget. They've had, you know, the 3-5 year plan going on forever. But you know, they're working through their own decisions as well, so they're postponing that. But that's going to be on the radar pretty soon.
Okay.
And they're looking to actually just downsize to a pickup truck that could have a plow. Because there's times in winter storms when they need to get out. And even though they said the DPW does a great job plowing, sometimes there's a mound that builds up by the bay doors. And when they leave, they hit the roof. And also if they just need to get into a house that's not plowed or something, they would like that addition to have that option. So that's on the radar for them. But for now, they understand that money's tight, so they're not asking for any this year.
Teresa, I have one additional question. You had sent an email recently about our municipal vehicle fleet. Were you intending that to be part of this or no?
You mean, I was just asking what's in the municipal vehicle and send that out.
No, I had asked that question in response to your inquiry about another borough vehicle.
Oh, it was not requested by recreation. I put out to recreation that it was a recreation vehicle that we talked about. But it did, it did not come through in recreation's request this year.
I think I'm confused because I received the email about the request for a potential request or whether it should be included. I didn't realize it was intended for small ticket capital.
And I even put it out to DJ, and he wanted to know why it had to come through recreation. I said, because every department requests their vehicles as part of the department request. Not, we don't have like an overall vehicle request. If DPW needs a vehicle, they request it. If fire needs a vehicle, police need a vehicle, and only certain vehicles qualify capital. So it wouldn't be straight up, cars don't, SUVs do.
Okay, I
so-
think that clarifies.
And-
I'll touch base with them.
Okay, and there's nothing that said, this isn't set in stone that you couldn't, in a future meeting, do another small ticket capital. We just traditionally do it sometime after we adopt the budget and before the end of the year and put the request out. When you look at the current fund budget, it's totally different than the capital budget. And we don't address capital needs until after the current fund budget has been adopted for a variety of reasons, but mostly because they're not tied to the same budget. And secondly, because the governing body authorizes $215,000 annually as part of pay-as-you-go capital. And if for some reason they decided not to authorize it, then there would be a different discussion because your balances would be different than that would be currently.
So are you moving this to consent agenda?
No, it'll come in the next agenda. It'll be in a resolution and those three department requests will be on there.
Thank you. Moving along, borough fee schedule, please.
Yes, as we do on an annual basis, we look at, we pass all fees, we set all fees by ordinance, and we generally, at least annually, look at our fee ordinances. And this year, at the suggestion and request of multiple department heads and discussions we've had internally and we've had with the finance committee, we were looking to really take a hard look at our fee schedules and try very hard to match what something costs for a service so far as a fee goes, like for argument's sake, for a zoning permit, to what it actually took to provide that service. So in front of you, after a series of meetings, and I'm certainly going to compliment our department heads, compliment Allison. We met in multiple meetings here, and this is our collective joint recommendation on what we should have, what our fee schedule should be, hopefully introduced and adopted and put into effect for 2023. All of our expenses are going up. Perfect example is just look at Fairhaven Fields and what it's costing for seed and fertilizer and lawn paint and everything that we're doing in the borough. We're seeing increases in. So the different groups that use our fields or the different people that come for a permit or come for different services here. The intent of this exercise was to clearly have the fees that are paid help offset the revenue that it takes to deliver these services. And so I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it in any detail or you've had any questions. We did look at other towns. We had lengthy discussions on what it would take. Are we missing anything? And you'll see that these are relatively tied to similar fees in other towns and what we feel it costs to deliver these fees or services to the residents of the borough of Fairhaven. And that generally speaking, if the governing body is on board, we would introduce this at the next meeting and adopt it at the end of the meeting in December.
I have a couple quick things, Mayor. So one of the things that I didn't see in here, and perhaps I've overlooked it, but I know that when a tree company or landscape crew is going to do work in Fairhaven, they have to get registered. I believe it's a $10 registration fee. Is that right? Yes.
Yes.
I don't see that in here anywhere. Was it left out for on purpose or? I would suggest that we don't want it to be too much money because we don't want it to hide from our administrative
Right.
oversight, but we definitely could increase that from $10 as a note.
Sorry, which one?
It's not on here. I just know about it, but I think that should be in here and could go up a
What
little.
would you suggest?
Hey, $25, it seems to me, it's certainly. That's was my thought. Along those same lines, I see you're striking out the tree removal permit, and we all know that there's a tree preservation ordinance on the horizon.
It'll be in that ordinance.
Which makes sense. However, that has no traction at the moment. As legislation goes, that is pretty soupy right now, and I'm very involved in it. It has not been introduced, and of course, we all know it takes time to adopt legislation and then also to make it become part of the structure of government as things need to be, how there needs to be procedure, we'll need to change things, forms will need to change. My concern is that we're removing fees and we're not going to even have any ordinance in place. I'm already concerned about what.
So you'd like to do that in?
Can I make a
I
recommendation?
think that leaves-
Whatever the language is in the new ordinance that we're working on, why don't we incorporate that into here? And
That
then-
might be the
And then we can
cleanest.
just remove it when the other one is.
Why struck it in anticipation that I thought that the.
You thought we were
ordinance
gonna use
was
that
going to be
tonight?
introduced tonight, however, it was
Is it on the agenda?
not.
No.
No.
Yeah.
So logistically, you can send me a memo. I'm about halfway through the memo, making those revisions with notes back to you on each of your points in each of the sections as to like whether it's administrative issue, drafting issue, things like that. There is a section in there, you did a very good job of putting the table of fees for the tree removals. I think as part of this ordinance, if you just leave the tree removal permit as it is, and you just take this out of here, it'll be resolved by the ultimate ordinance that's adopted with chapter 25.
And how many months do you imagine that is? Well,
How do you
it's
mean,
gonna
what?
take time.
Oh, to go
for
back
it
to,
be-
to go back and forth, probably probably February by the time you get around to it.
So,
Should do that.
So I think you should leave the tree removal permit as it is for the next several months. And there's a specific section that addresses 30-7.341 in the ordinance that I'm drafting, that Teresa gave me a very detailed memo on the fee structure. So if you just don't touch it in this, it will be resolved when that's adopted. It'll be all packaged.
okay, so restore this, eliminate the strikeout,
Yeah,
restore
I've-
this. Oh, okay,
That's fine.
all right,
And then if you just leave it as it is for now, it'll be all be dealt with all at once.
I've got, yes.
And timeline wise, I'm
I'm
hoping that's all.
Two more things, and then we have here a tipping fee for, it's a $700 fee for a commercial. We should this is for, say, a home builder that wants to bring all the cardboard from all the new windows over to DPW. Is that what this is?
No,
Can you
this is
explain?
some of, obviously, if someone wants more than one trash can,
Oh,
they currently pay for the additional tipping fee. It's not so much that we care so much with the trash can, but if you have 2 trash cans, we're doubling our tipping fees.
mhm,
We do have commercial entities in town that the borough still picks up their trash.
mhm.
So, and they're commercial, some of them have 2, 3, 4,
Yes.
cans. And that, the cost of tipping has gone up so much. We're just trying to at least break even. So it'll be higher for residential and it'll also be even higher for commercial.
What was the
$25 before? as little as 25 before? Is that what, am I reading this right?
It was per month
Oh, per month.
It was $300 a
for the
year,
year.
Okay.
but if a new resident came in and decided they needed a new can,
Okay,
and they moved in June, then it would be 150.
got it.
So it's gonna go up $200 per residence.
Mhm.
And what was the prior commercial rate?
We didn't separate it out. But
So
as,
this would
as,
be
as
a
commercial
new-
entities go through the planning board process, for the most part, we're trying to remove them from having the borough deal with their trash. They are recommended to get dumpsters and to handle that as part of their business. But we do have businesses in town that still use trash cans. And
Well, they
and
do
won't-
because they're small operators. You
Some of
know, if you have 300 commercial buildings, multiple tenants and big operations, I think it makes sense to shift it for them to have independent contracts for their work, but that's not the case here. So I know we're not here to have that discussion tonight.
But it's a small amount for a business, $750 per year is not much.
I'm gonna ask. Yeah, I hope so. I hope
I mean,
that's-
if nothing else, I mean, I really feel that in the environment we're in, we really need to make sure that the borough is getting paid.
I agree.
You know, we should not be subsidizing these types of.
Well, they pay now, correct?
Yes,
but I think that-
but they're paying at a residential rate.
Mhm.
And they do generate a lot of trash. We have one or two that have 3, 4, 5 easy.
And it's not possible to, their fees to just be reflected in the number of cans? And rather than a bulk?
Well, no, that is,
They
per-
pay
that,
per
that, they do pay per can,
This looks like any commercial operation that needs garbage pickup. will have to
but
fix
it's
it.
for additional trash receptacles. If you look on the left there, tipping fee for additional trash receptacles. So for each one,
If they get an additional can.
yes.
Okay, thank you. And I had one more. It costs $50 right now for a plot in our community gardens. I see you're proposing it go to 60. I would just say, are we really incurring $10 more cost? I would say leave it at 50.
Actually, it's the cost to, every year they bring someone in to till the soil. And of course, and we also provide water there.
Mhm. Have you done an analysis on the actual cost?
I know the cost of the tilling goes up every year.
Okay. Thank you, that's all my comments.
The $5 per participant per season, that was the discussion with the rec committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Which page is that on? I'm
That's
just
page 2.
Seeing lots of numbers.
3/4 of the way to the bottom.
Do you want me to expand on that?
I think for the good of the borough, yes, I remember the conversation.
Yeah, so for example, organizations such as rec soccer, you have 100 participants, it generates a $500 fee. And when you base it per participant, then you're evenly spreading out the cost among all of the participants versus everyone being whacked with the same fee, and they might have wildly different numbers of enrolled athletes.
So my one question on it, which I don't know if this is to Councilwoman Kristen Keefe or to Teresa, is all of these other fees are, I think they are, from looking at them very quickly, are collected by the borough. Is
Correct.
this we're gonna go collect a $5 fee from every individual soccer player?
No,
Oh.
it's processed through rec soccer. So rec soccer will share, we have X number of players enrolled this year. Okay, in that way. And so my recommendation was, at least as it related to this, was that we have some lead time, that it not be in effect because it's a new fee for maybe 6 months, so that these organizations can prepare and plan for the additional fee that they may see per enrolled athlete, and they can then incorporate that into their costs. So no, we'll collect it from the chairperson of the whatever the sport is versus
So what's,
back.
so when the first collection, are we saying is spring of 23, basically? Baseball, baseball,
When do those start to enroll, I guess would be the question, because you want to give them enough lead time to prepare for this and properly queue up their registration and such. Yeah, it's probably soon, right, so I would say this one, you might want to hold off and put it in effect in 6 months, or for example, or starting with soccer season 2023, something like that, so that there is enough foresight. We should be putting this out also all our community partners, so they're aware.
DJ reached out to the various and kind of gave them a heads up that we're looking to amend, and this is what we're looking at.
And he thought as long as we adopted it this year, it wouldn't be problematic in spring sports, that they were aware it was coming.
you didn't hear any issues,
Okay.
you didn't hear any issues
No.
there?
Okay.
He did
Yeah,
check with
he
them,
did.
just to give
Okay,
them a
great.
heads up that
Yeah.
we're considering this.
Okay, great.
Any other questions?
I just had a couple. Engineering is an increase of a spread of 85 to 125 an hour, and the increase is going to 130 to 180 an hour. So would this be for planning or zoning board engineering?
Yeah, that's set by municipal land use law, the actual amount of that. But there's also other times where we would charge for engineering services if they were called out to do different reviews, you know, on site, whatever they may be. And Rich and Nick went over their, you know, fees very carefully and recommended that this would be appropriate.
Okay, right, but I guess my point is these would be as they go through planning or zoning board applications.
Yes, except noting that the number eludes me, Meg, but on municipal land use law, it's up to a certain portion of what we talked about this in the contract of what
Right.
their salary, it's based on salary.
Okay. And then the zoning permit application. Historically, what was the rationale, if anybody knows, why commercial zoning permit applications are double the residential? Is it because they're more complicated?
They're more
or-
complicated.
It's all-
And that's why we partitioned out new dwellings also. If you go into Nick's office and you see the amount of papers that are for either commercial or for a new dwelling, it's very different than, you know, a standard zoning permit.
A new dwelling means any new structure from the foundation up.
Yes.
And I would just say the applicants also find it equally complicated. And that perhaps in the future, there's a solution that is less complicated, a little more user-friendly for the applicants, especially in a commercial district. That's an aspiration, but I'd like to think that we're taking steps in that way, not just charging more because it's more complicated. It's a fair point, but we could simplify the process. I think we should try to.
I think those are all my questions.
Engineering hasn't been raised in about 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed a little low. I was just asking, you know, that those are related to applications.
Mayor, just a quick question.
Sure.
This is clerk. Madam Clerk, we use the MSPCA for animal control. I just ran into this issue in Roosevelt, so I don't know if you have any potentially dangerous dogs here. But when you do get one, I had to rush to redo the ordinance in Roosevelt to have it match the SPCA fee schedule for impounding the dog and then giving it back with potentially a dangerous license. I noticed that those weren't, we have animal impoundment here. I mean, it was 500 from the Monmouth County SPCA. in Roosevelt. I had to scramble to do that when we had a potentially dangerous dog there. I just wanted to mention that to you. I don't know if you deal with that, probably not as often in this community. But they have raised their boarding fees and their fees, MSPCA, so I don't know if you want to check on that.
I'll look at the
Could we
contract,
put
but-
just in accordance with the adopted fees, like just reference their fees?
You can probably do that, I believe they publish it, although they gave me an ordinance that matched when you, their procedures, when you have a potentially dangerous dog. So long story short, when you have a potentially dangerous dog in town, thank God you don't at this moment in time, it becomes a big community concern. And so we had to scramble to do that. So I just wanted to mention that we, wanted to chase that down here.
Like a pit bull or rabies or?
We had a dog in Roosevelt get loose and bite 2 people. And so, but they had clothes on. And so the rule is if it doesn't break the skin or leave scarring, then the people are allowed to have the dog back. It doesn't get destroyed until frankly, it actually maims someone. That's the law. And so you have to keep the dog in special enclosures. It has to have a special tag that alerts people to the ocean. It's potentially a dangerous dog. And it's obviously a huge deal in a small town like Roosevelt. And so we had to scramble to make sure that we had the procedures in place to deal with it when it happened. And the borough was ultimately, of course, put in money at the outset because we didn't have it in place at the time. So I just wanted to mention that here. I doubt it's as big an issue here. It's a much more rural area out there and there's a lot more animal freedom, we'll call it. But I just wanted to mention it too.
Is that, I mean, can, want to pick on any particular breed, but a poodle bites somebody in the.
So it doesn't, the breed is not dealt with in the law. And so functionally, the dog is considered property. It's your property, it's your personal property. And for the government to take your personal property, you have to meet the standards of the statute. The statute is essentially that it has to leave scarring or essentially dismember or kill someone. And so it becomes a big issue in the town because you have dogs running loose. They might bite someone else's dog. That's not sufficient cause to take the dog away. It has to actually maim a person. I know as prosecutor in Peaport, I had this issue. I knew there was a dangerous dog in town. We got it registered and we knew we had irresponsible owners. And I unfortunately had to wait till it bit the 3rd person who broke the skin in order to get the dog out of the town. So because, and as you can imagine, the neighborhood knows when there's a dog running around. That's of that nature.
Yes.
So, yeah, so you're used to be the clerk at Peaport, so you know that's I don't think you have that issue as much here, just given the nature of the community. But if you do, the people will be here and you'll be paying the money if you don't have any place. So I just wanted to mention that.
You think we should add a line to it then, Brad?
I think that the MSPCA basically, I just called them in Roosevelt and they said, here's the ordinance that matches our procedures that are legal at this time, and they gave it to me. And then we went from there, and the fee was $500 because if they keep it for 7 days, and the fee was $60 plus an $80 fee for returning it and transport and stuff like that. And they had it all worked out in literally 4 pages, and it was really a scramble.
So you suggest we get a copy of the RSPCA's?
Yeah, I can take it out from
I
here
give
too.
you this ordinance with the changes made tonight.
Do that. That works. And I have the materials from Roosevelt. I can reach out to Ross over there.
I'll work with you on it. But this one.
I just don't want to do it again in another town.
Yeah.
Because Roosevelt was
Thank
very
you,
tiring.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving along, River Road street opening.
All right,
Teresa.
painful as this is,
Yeah, you take this one.
I received an email from New Jersey Natural Gas back in November, on October 25th. And basically, they have a system in place where they can scan gas meters for corrosion that would lead to potential leakage from above the ground. Unfortunately, in Fairhaven, when the new water main went in, according to New Jersey Natural Gas, whether or not New Jersey American Water agrees, somehow the new water main, which is iron, came in contact with their system at the corner of Hanson River, and it shorted it out. So now they can't use their screening system to monitor that gas main. So they applied to Monmouth County for a street opening permit, a new brand new River Road on the corner of Hanson River. Now to their, we have a very good working relationship with Monmouth County, their engineering department and their roads department. And they were adamant when that street opening permit came in that they were going to work with the Borough of Fairhaven on this one, that our residents had been through enough with the River Road project and with finally getting our road restored. And they were, although they realized the importance of New Jersey Natural Gas fixing this issue, we certainly didn't want to expose our residents to undue, let's just say, going through paving again. We didn't want to have a hole in the road. So right now, what we're working on, and it's not complete yet, but I just wanted you to hear from me first. Monmouth County Engineering, Monmouth County Road Department, Bob Dickerson, who heads that, Rich Gardella, they're going to meet on site at the Hanson River, and they're going to take a look at what they feel it would take to allow them to open the road. The email exchange back and forth, basically and fundamentally, what the county is going to work with Fairhaven on and look to have happen is that New Jersey Natural Gas will have to restore the entire intersection. River Road, both in the hands, both ways. They'll have to, put the crosswalks back, the bike lanes back. It'll be an expensive project, and we're looking to have them not only post escrow with the county to make sure that it's restored to everyone's satisfaction. Like any road opening project, they won't open it and do all that at one time. They'll open it, they'll patch it, they'll come back, in a few months, and they will restore it. Now, I also think that we're going to meet with New Jersey Natural Gas and talk about, we have other projects coming up with New Jersey Natural Gas that involve paving and restoration, and hopefully, they'll work with us to help, make those projects as productive as possible in exchange for, our joint cooperation with the county on this piece. I'm sure New Jersey Natural Gas and New Jersey American Water will get into ultimately who pays for this, but that's not our concern, as long as it's restored to everyone's satisfaction. And there's enough escrow posted to make sure that it does that. And believe me, it's probably the most painful email I've received in a long time. But I do thank the county and in so much as that they were very cognizant of the fact that this was, been difficult for the borough, and they're going to work with us to make it as painless and productive as possible.
As long as it doesn't take 6 months to get crosswalks again.
I don't, I honestly, Meg, I don't think the crosswalks will be affected in the opening. They'll only be affected when we have to pave the
Right.
entire intersection.
Right,
So
I
they
know,
will
but
have
that was the problem, nobody came back
Yeah,
to
they-
paint for a very long time.
they will have a
Just
crew,
red.
But then the way, those are different contractors.
yeah, but these are your standard, these are not decorative, these are your standard.
Yes,
And
that's correct.
They should have a subcontractor do that pretty quickly after they put the paving down.
Everything
And
is-
I will keep you guys
everything
updated.
looks So nice right
I
now.
know, I know.
Enjoy it for the
So
next.
Just driving by
It's-
yesterday and admiring it.
It's not just us, though. Let's make sure the entire community knows what's going
We
on.
will,
Right.
as soon as, I will keep you posted and we'll keep the community updated.
Is there a timeline on when they would like to do this work or need to do this work?
I don't have that at this juncture. All I told Mr. Smock from New Jersey Natural Gas is, my last email to him was, I said, I know this much regardless of the size of the opening, the county and the borough are going to want that entire intersection paved and all 4 crosswalks restriped. It may even impact bike lane striping in that area too. I'm going to ask the engineers to do a cost estimate for complete restoration. I'm inclined to think that New Jersey Natural Gas should post escrow the county. I said, please start working on those details at your end. So we'll know more once the county and engineering and Bob Dickerson was on vacation last week, so he's gonna set something up with Rich this week and see if we can get out there and get a feel for what they actually think needs to be done.
Yeah, my only comment would be that optimal to try and do it when school is not in session, obviously. That's a major thoroughfare and intersection for.
And maybe they can add a little something to help ease the pain.
I understand that. Point noted.
Moratorium.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to public comment on agenda items. This is for agenda items only. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please try to observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public that has a comment on agenda items only?
Hi. I'm Carolyn Ferguson, 7 Colonial Court. I'm also the secretary of the Fairhaven Business Association. Just regarding the extra fees for commercial properties on the trash cans. Commercial property owners and residential property owners, did they pay a different tax rate or did they pay the same tax rate?
That pay the same, well, the tax rate's the same for everybody.
Right.
It's just based on the assessments.
Okay,
It's
good.
really what calculates what they pay in taxes.
Okay, good. So both types of owners pay the same rate of taxes. I would like to point out that there are services that the commercial property owners do not get, like bulk pickup. Considering that these trash cans really are only for the smaller businesses that are not getting dumpsters and stuff, it seems to me like it's a little bit unfriendly to small businesses to charge them extra. I also imagine that most of these businesses don't have leaves that need to be picked up, so that they are, we're all paying the same tax rate. But I don't feel like they're overburdening the system. In fact, they may be underburdening the system. So just, I would hope that we would try to be friendly to small businesses if that's what we want to have in our town. So-
Just to be clear, that it's not for the one can that they get. It's only when they need additional cans.
Yes, I understand. But the same thing, if a resident needs a second can or a commercial property owner needs a second can, it's the same can of trash.
I appreciate where you're coming from. It was the same thought I had. I clearly don't want the borough in the red. We're not in the business of subsidizing, but I also feel if their trash is consistent with the residential trash, except they have 2 cans, certainly know some homes that have 2 cans and they'll pay more. If there's a business that's paying more for a second can, it should be at the same rate. Their trash is the same as anybody else's trash.
What
Our business
am I
is-
looking at here?
You're
Where-
looking
where
back
is
to the
this?
ordinance.
Yeah, which,
It's
Page
on,
3,
page 3?
top of the page 3.
so halfway down.
Tipping
says
fee for additional
refuse.
trash receptacles under
I
refuse
got you.
there.
Thank you.
So Teresa, just to clarify, because I thought I might have been confused earlier. This is a proposed fee change that would have a fee of $750 for a second can or an additional can at a commercial use. An additional can at a residential use would cost $500. So the $250 difference surcharge on a business
Do we
for the
get-
same can.
Do we get charged more by the trash collection company to pick up at a commercial location?
No, this has to do with tipping fees,
That's
They're
it.
collecting.
It's what comes
That's
out of
it.
the can.
right? Which basically is based on weight.
Here's what for me, this comes down to, I want to be part of a local government that supports our business district. We have a lovely business community. It should be thriving. Anything that we can do to help without it costing, as I think Councilwoman Neff made a fair point earlier, and I agree with her, we should do. Whether it's, a modest fee for a sidewalk cafe permit or keeping fees the same where we can. These are little things, and they matter. They matter to a small business. And we want to be business friendly. We want more of these shops here.
We can make it 600 for both.
You could do
It's- I mean,
that. Fair is fair. That's the same.
But I mean, I still think that we should be making sure that the borough is not subsidizing, and we should not be in the business of doing that. So we can just.
Is this
find out.
customary to have a differential between residential and commercial?
Yes,
Why?
commercial generates heavier waste,
I will
just in
say-
general, especially food establishments.
So
we
the
have-
waste is different. just
It's
in
about
general.
weight. You're paying to get rid of the weight of the garbage.
Well, let me ask a different question. If you forego the trash pickup that the municipality offers, you then get a commercial trash bin, right? Anybody have I don't have a concept of what that costs.
Usually about $200-300 a month.
That's a lot more.
Yeah.
Right, but this is $750 a year, right? So
Right,
it's a
that's
lot
not-
more, right?
that's not-
I mean, you don't really
But
have
I
to short side
imagine
it to
there might
scale
be,
down.
yeah,
So one of the issues as a business is if you call one of those commercial haulers, they don't come out and pick up one can, they put a dumpster at your place of business, and
Right.
then you pay for the dumpster. whatever.
right.
So it is a happy medium between you paying to pick up their garbage and then paying to pick up their garbage. It's really somewhere in the middle. This isn't terribly uncommon, so like I'm Borough Bradley Beach, because it's not community concerns or whatever, as you pointed out. So like in Bradley Beach, the borough wants to collect the bulk garbage on the beachfront so that they don't have 15 garbage trucks trying to traverse the beachfront in the middle of the summertime. And so DPW just goes out and picks it up in bins and ATVs and hauls it off as a convenience to keep the beachfront nice. So, it's really your choice as to how you want to do it as a community with it too.
It takes a long time for a small business to fill a big dumpster. In the meantime, it can be a smelling nuisance and an expensive contract to add to their operations. This is.
Yeah, sure, no, but my thought is then I wonder if some of the smaller businesses pool together, I would imagine at some properties and get one commercial bin, which might actually end up being cheaper for them than having a second bin from the town.
Well, that's like sharing water as a business. That never works out well.
But maybe not, but I don't know.
And I assume we're talking about commercial property owners, not business owners. I assume the landlord would be
Well,
arranging
that's,
for the trash.
that could be,
Between
that's
landlord
between
and
them,
Right.
that's contracted between
But
the
yes, you're
landlord
talking
and
about,
the tenant.
it goes by property. Well, how they arrange it on their property between landlord and tenant, it's up to them. Functionally.
And like I said, there is services that commercial property owners are just not giving.
Yeah, right.
Despite paying the same tax rate. Thank you.
Just to close that out, I appreciate the idea of, I'm sorry, the average of the two perhaps, so that it's the same. If you need a second can and you're currently receiving municipal garbage pickup, it should be the same with the commercial. or
If the idea is that the commercial district enhances the residents' life, I agree,
Yeah.
but you're also looking at, you're subsidizing their garbage. Just making sure that
We
that's,
should raise
No,
it
if
to
they're the
something.
same.
if you're the same, but the commercial garbage is heavier, you're, as a resident, you're subsidizing the commercial.
That was the
garbage.
thought process behind
Yeah,
the
I appreciate
discussion.
that. I guess I'm challenging.
I'm not saying that that's the way to go,
idea.
but that's
Yeah.
the understanding
Would
we
the
have to have. when we make
bookstore's
decisions.
second can of trash be that much heavier than my second can of trash?
Well, that's what Attorney Cannon was saying, is
Well, folks
that
are very
It's typically heavier. I mean, you think about it, if you're a business and you're paying everything, when you go into your garbage can in your house, you just throw it in there, you put it on the curb. But if you're a store, you get as much in that can as possible, just like you get as much in the shipment that comes in the back door, or the employee that works the front register. And so they just act differently as a user, and food service establishments have heavier garbage. It's just.
Listen, the other side is Carolyn saying that the commercial side is subsidizing our leaf pickup. So there's
I know.
different
I would
ways
say,
to look
I
at it.
could give you, I mean, you get, I know Tommy DeLisa, who picks up all the garbage in Red Bank. Or not all of it, but some of it in the commercial district, some of it elsewhere, not the hospital. But if you wanted to give him a call, he could, I sat with him at lunch one day and I learned a lot about garbage. We were doing.
Well,
Well, I would imagine too, though, with second cans, you might not fill it up every single time. It might be like half full. I don't know. I'm just thinking about the optionality of a second can.
$250. I appreciate the fact that we don't want to overburden our businesses, but $250 in the world of business, running any business and living in Fairhaven, that cannot be a substantial amount. So I think, I'm okay with either way,
Everything
as
adds
long as
up.
the borough is not subsidizing it.
Mhm.
But it's, I don't know that if it was $1,000 plus, I would just say sure, but you're talking about $200.
Can I ask Teresa, when's the next, I know we had like a moratorium on the trash, we extended the contract. How many more times can we do that before we have to renegotiate?
We can,
So next year,
but the tipping fees have nothing to do with our contract. They're established by the county.
right,
And
okay,
they've upped them during the year multiple times, it's greatly escalated, over the last couple of years.
and to that, one more thing. To that, people who are composting, or to Mrs. Blazer, perhaps if she's on, who have the smaller cans, are we gonna get into the weeds and start charging them less, or
Well,
anything like that?
the first can, there is no charge for anybody.
But what
And
if
they only
somebody-
pick the smaller can, that's a personal preference for the residents. They're allowed to have the larger can, but some residents, they don't need it, and they don't want to take the room in there, either in the garage or wherever.
We don't have the smaller cans anymore.
I'm gonna
That's true.
propose a good
data, good information leads to good decision making. So I will take this back to the Fairhaven Business Association and see if we can collect some data. How many businesses have private contract trash? Do we have any restaurants that are still on Borough trash pickup?
Well, I can tell you
You can
that.
ask, yeah. Betty
We,
Ann.
we have that information on.
We don't have it here tonight. Clearly, we're in this discussion. So why don't I follow up with you and with a member of the business association and get our heads wrapped around this?
Well, if that's the case, the goal here obviously is to get this passed this year so we can start our new fees in 23. So, at this juncture, if you want to leave it the same for commercial and residential and then look to amend it again, I'd still like to see this ordinance be.
I don't want to slow
introduced.
it down either. It sounds like the information is readily available and I'll just reach out and see if we can't do that right away.
And if I can work to help for consensus.
I can send to everybody the commercial entities that have second cans and how many.
Oh, great. You can send that information.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Paul Ferguson, 7 Colonial Court. I'm speaking about the decision to use Bicentennial Hall for council meetings. I attended the meeting that they had there, and I think the consensus in the room was that that space was quite suitable, but the acoustics were poor. Seems to me it would be a lot cheaper to improve the acoustics there, to put steel beams in this room. There may be other considerations, but that's really the deciding point. Think about that.
I do agree with your premise that the acoustics could be improved with some sort of soundproofing. The other part of it really isn't on the agenda. And I'm just pointing out, I have some concern with the staff having to go back and forth to Bicentennial Hall every time this meets. There are some other things to discuss there. I don't get the feeling we've made a final decision. And I think that your comment will be, definitely considered as we continue discussing what we want to do.
Yeah, I assume that there would be other factors, but if that's a driving.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I would just like to add to what Paul said. I really enjoyed the meeting at Bicentennial Hall, and I thought one of the other important factors was that in times of COVID, there's open windows, there's doors we could open. It was easy to take your chair and slide over in the corner if you were concerned. So I really, I thought it was really good for meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice to see you all. It had a more family feel.
We didn't have neck pain the next day from doing like this. Yeah.
Anyone else present in the public, if they comment on agenda items? No, Teresa, Allison now, Allison.
Stephanie Adams. Stephanie, you're.
Hi,
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
good, how are you?
Good.
Stephanie Adams, 230 Oxford Avenue. I had one comment, now I'm up to 3, but I'll keep them really short. On the bins, and Tracy, you and Lalini, you probably know too, and Mike, we've been talking to a provider called Unwaste that collects organic waste, as in food scraps and items that you could normally compost, but a lot of us aren't in a point in our lives where we're ready to start composting. The point of my story is that it might be something that Carolyn, the business association, maybe could talk about this a little bit and get a quote from Unwaste. I know that for residential pickup, so they come to your house once a week or twice a week. You have a bucket where you put all of your food scraps and organic waste material, and they come and pick it up and they compost it in an industrial composting facility. They also have a commercial micro hauling program. So because food waste is so heavy, it may be that by talking to them and maybe even working with the borough, this is something that the Green Team has been saying for some time, that the borough might actually save money on tipping fees because we're no longer hauling the food waste from our restaurants. So Carolyn, if you want more information, I know Kelly has their contact information. They don't have their commercial fees on their website, but you could give them a call where we've spoken to Lauren a few times. But that might be something that the business district wants to consider, having 1 or 2 bins where the restaurants can dump their food waste. You're taking that out of the municipal waste stream, and it's kind of a win-win situation, hopefully financially and from a sustainable standpoint. My second point was on the gas line issue. I kind of missed who did what. I would hope that, that's awful, but I would hope that this is something that we can take care of sooner than later. Obviously, you always want your gas lines to be monitored, but I agree with Tracy, whether it's a gas company or the water company, the residents as customers of this company, it'd be nice if they could, do something to make it right, because it seems like this was just terrible negligence on somebody's part, and it's really going to cause a lot of disruption in town for all the residents and businesses. And my third point was on the bike park. I recall when this first came up, I don't remember what the consensus was. I think that everybody loves the idea. It's a really cute idea, but I know that a lot of us at the Green Team and just residents were concerned about, pouring asphalt at McCarter Park and potentially damaging any root systems in the areas, trees. So at that time, I thought that we were gonna, and by we, I mean the town, the governing body, somebody was gonna explore other locations for the park, just because, I agree with Councilman Neff and Councilman Cole, you kind of want to, it'd be nice to keep our parks as natural as possible. I don't know, I was just trying to think of other paved areas where you could even maybe set up a temporary park with cones, maybe the drop-off area at Knollwood after hours or on weekends. But anyway, I'm wondering what the plan is to come to a consensus as to whether or not the town will proceed with that project at McCarter Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
There's nobody else with their hand raised.
Moving along to approval of minutes. October 24th, 2022 regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members, Chris McKee,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Patch. TQ,
Yes.
Net,
Yes.
Old business. Teresa, fence ordinance.
Yes, the governing body is in possession of 2 separate memos. One from Mike Irene, who's our zoning board attorney, and one from Nick Korchinski. Mike Irene's memo speaks to the larger question on whether or not we would want to administratively approve waivers to our current fence ordinance. He says in his synopsis on the last page, and of course, I could go through this entire memo if everybody wants me to, on what I thought his pertinent input was, but I think that he did say on the last page, contrary to the suggestion included in the email, that's my email is referencing, that was the genesis of this analysis, is respectfully submitted that any such exception should not be authorized merely via some sort of administrative review or waiver process. I would suggest that most administrative officers would not want to be put in the position of making such a determination. So most importantly, there is nothing in municipal land use law that grants authority to administrative officers to grant an exception to a requirement of a land use ordinance. And to that end, he says the governing body believes there are circumstances in which exemption from the general fence restriction should be permitted, and is respectfully submitted that the ordinance should be amended accordingly. He goes on to speak about the importance of the variance process at the end. The variance process allows the zoning board to consider at a public hearing upon notice to neighbors and other interested parties the specific facts and circumstances in question, and then decide if relief is appropriate, and if so, to also impose such conditions as may be necessary to avoid negative impact. So he would not, based on his memo, is not recommending that the administrative approval. Nick Perchinsky in his memo dated November 7th speaks to something similar in the first page, where the last paragraph, he says the zoning official mantra is if something is in black and white but gray and unclear, if any doubt exists, the application should be denied or further reviewed by the zoning board. Any individual application, interpretation, applicable regulation is beyond the statutory jurisdiction of the zoning officer's position. And the option to allow for administrative waiver at the zoning permit level would break the checks and balances of the zoning process and open the process to inconsistency and possibilities of additional unintended consequences. Nick put a lot of time and thought in this, and he pointed out other towns that have very similar ordinances, fence ordinances to the boroughs. And then he goes on at the end of his memo to a couple of the other pieces of what he recommends changes to that ordinance that he outlines in his last page of his memo. So, I mean, obviously, I leave it to the governing body to decide, where they want to go with this, but it's on the agenda as old business because, it was asked and this is the follow-up that came at your instruction.
Mayor.
Sure.
So this is a very robust response from both Mike Irene and Nick. It's very good. And Nick has identified a few things that should be cleaned up. Just as a matter of housekeeping, reviewing inconsistencies is an easy thing to, or it's something we should do immediately. And what I see about our current ordinance, and I don't disagree, I agree with your summary. The current ordinance, however, so with the cleanups that Nick's talking about, the ordinance is fine. It's just like every other fence ordinance. This is not a big deal. However, ours does call out or recognizes conditions where there is a justifiable exemption. And what it says specifically is that residents living adjacent to public property used for waterfront access may have height requirement waived. We could use the word exemption there, which is like Irene's point. Let's not ask the officer to have this magic wand and to overstep his jurisdiction and have this waiver authority, but rather embedded in the ordinance. So the requirement waived after application to the construction official. So this language identifies the need for an exemption in a certain condition where you have a land use conflict. You have a residential use next to a public use. We can all see why, oh, that makes sense. Maybe they need a 6-foot fence there, up to them. It allows that resident who might be adjacent to public access to the water to protect their quality of life. We have, and it's fair to say, I think we all know the situation that brought this to our attention. And what we have is a use that is not permitted immediately adjacent to a residential neighborhood. The use that is not permitted is the shopping center. In this case, we have the back of the house. We have the back service doors on the west side of what runs from the old Seed to Sprout up to the wash house. And that is a use conflict between the character and quality of life of those residents that live directly across the street. So to me, where you have a use that is not permitted in the zone next to a residential neighborhood, they might need an exemption from the fence ordinance. If we need to talk about what that wording would look like, might look like something, well, where you have a land use adjacency with a use that's not permitted in the zone. That should be examined. I think we all know that sending our residents to the zoning board is arduous. It is expensive. And although procedurally correct when you're looking for relief, it's beyond inconvenient. It's a hardship. And I don't think that's the right procedure for something like a fence issue. I would suggest,
That's the opposite than what Nick said, right? That it takes away the checks and balances because it's hard to make a distinction between different cases. I think that's.
No,
isn't
Nick
that
was-
where the point was made?
well, he's talking about the waiver, the word waiver. And he's right, giving special magic powers to the zoning officer to decide on his own.
So you would have to go to the zoning board.
Or
Or
the
variance.
ordinance is amended to specify specific conditions where there's an obvious land use conflict that is deleterious to the residential use in the immediate area, which is, I believe, the case that we're dealing with in this instance.
So it would seem to me like we would need to be very careful on how tight we make that language, because you don't want to have it open enough to provide so many exceptions. I think we need to just think about what that language would be. I'll love to see what the zoning board would suggest on that regard, because we really have to be careful on who are we going to make exceptions for. You could
And well,
argue multiple
specifically,
things.
perhaps, I don't know, we could explore. I think in this case, and I can only probe this one and suggest that there might be other conditions like this, where you have a front yard or a side yard immediately adjacent to a use that is not permitted in the zone.
Have these two memorandums been sent to zoning, to the zoning board?
No, they have not been sent to the zoning board officially. They were sent to you, to the governing body as part of this overall review. And Mike Irene does speak to the section of that ordinance at the end of his second paragraph on page 3.
Yeah.
What he actually felt the intent of that waiver was. I'll do whatever you want. I mean, we can send this to the zoning board for input or discussion, or
I think
I
they are the
If you want to try to
experts.
pursue that, you have to.
We have to do that. I mean, they are the experts on this.
I understand your point. It'd just be very difficult to accomplish that without the experience, without their experience. What you're describing are really the criteria for hardship for C variance to get the fence higher.
Right.
And so it's really their authority. Like, so for example, you go to the zoning board and you say, I want a variance to construct a higher fence. I have a hardship, there's commercial property right next to me. That's the hardship criteria they're supposed to evaluate. So I think that if you wanted to explore that exception, I think you have to send it to the people. that have
Also,
most
the other-
experience in the
I think the other thing you have to consider, that's something that the zoning board considers. The zoning board considers who the neighbors are and what the street looks like. So just imagine, I understand the concept of, being next to, let's say, a shopping mall and wanting to put in a very high fence there. Imagine if everybody went ahead and did that, and you're driving by a street, that everybody has massive fences,
Oh, yeah.
all the way through, because they are next to, let's say, a commercial area that looks undesirable. What would the street look like? What would the neighbors look like? And does it take away something from the look of the street itself, possibly even bring down the value of the street? So I think the value that I think the zoning board brings, and I'm not saying everything should go to the zoning board, is that they are looking at all those aspects individually, and they're gonna go and drive by and see what the area looks like. So we have to be careful that we don't end up with an undesirable outcome of a street that has so many of those fences, that it really is not something that looks like what we might want to see in Fairhaven. And I think that's why I would suggest that we consult them to find out if there's a way to describe that in an ordinance, or if there's a different process that they maybe can have a faster route to the zoning board to get that decision resolved, because this is different than rebuilding a house, right? This is a different issue,
yeah,
so
I
maybe
think
you
it's
go,
interesting.
you
Maybe
can go
we-
through a different route
Maybe there's
of
a,
resolution.
sorry. I guess I appreciate everything you're saying. I wonder if there is a way, and I don't know how we would word this either, but right now going to the zoning board is expensive. You have to hire a lot of professionals. I wonder if there isn't some sort of a fast track mechanism or some sort of I know that there's an informal review available, or at least that's been our experience with some towns. It doesn't cost the same amount of money.
I mean, you have to put a zoning permit in a survey no matter what for any fence, pretty much.
That would be.
So that's really the expense is the most expensive part is the survey. The survey doesn't necessarily need to appear at the, really, you're saving people the appearance of the zoning hearing, is what you're describing. Because you have, the zoning permit's got to come with the survey, it's going to cost $400, $500. It's going to come with a zoning permit fee that you just talked about. And so that's already done, no matter what kind of fence you're building. It's just a matter of whether the person's appearing before the board for a variance or not.
Right.
And I think our zoning board is generally extremely cognizant and user-friendly when people want to represent themselves in a matter such as this. I think, you know, to Greg's point, if they had a survey, if they simply took some pictures of, you know, their yard, whatever surrounding them, and you wouldn't have to hire a lawyer or.
I don't see, most fence applications don't have professionals
Yeah.
appear, you just submit the survey, which you have to do with, even with the conforming fence to get the zoning officer to sign it. I guess my thing is you have to, when you had mentioned it, you're really talking about if I live next to a nuisance, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's very hard to define what a nuisance is. So is a nuisance public property, is it left field of one of the baseball fields where the baseballs are coming over and you need a taller fence? Is it living next to a commercial property? Is it living next to the river is clearly defined here? That's pretty straightforward. But those other ones are such individualized circumstances that if there is a way to do it, the zoning board's the people to ask. But I just, you know, as some non-land use attorney, I think it'd be very difficult to define what such a nuisance is without endangering the conformity that Councilwoman Neff is pointing out.
But if we can, sorry, if we can build a different track to get to it, I think, sorry, because I was in the zoning board before joining the council, and I know one of the biggest issues is getting to their schedule, because it could take 6 months to even be seen by them. And this is a smaller issue, and I also agree, I think we've gotten to the point in the zoning board that people show up there with a lawyer, an architect, and an urban planner, and I've been through it, so I know it personally, because that's what happened for my home when I had to renovate it. But I would support a different process, that's not necessary in a process that is fast tracked somehow.
Yeah.
But what about the escrows? I mean, you still have to put the deposits into the escrows and.
Not necessarily for a fence.
Well, it says who, right? The zoning board still needs their attorney, no?
Do they do a professional review on that? I think that's, well, I don't know how you do it here. Do you
Do they
charge
have
an escrow to
lawyers?
review a fence application?
I
If so, I can see why the residents are upset.
Generally speaking, on something like that, you know, I don't think it would take, you know, a professional review. I think it would be pretty straightforward going straight to the zoning board.
Well, let's ask the zoning board.
Can I make the recommendation? Let's send both memos to the zoning board and also ask them while they're reading them, is there a better mousetrap here for review of specifically fences?
If you want to save people money, allowing them to use an older survey or something that's clearly still on site that would be the best, you know, the best relief to your resident. And that's the biggest expense, put that survey together to make sure the fence is in the right place.
Sure.
I think they're more like 700 too, last time I kind of surveyed them.
I think you guys are getting fair here to mark up, but okay.
Moving along, facilities update.
Very brief.
Lisa.
It's only on here because it's on old business, and we promised we'd leave things under old business. We are still, I got an email today from Brian Mead, and he said he was on vacation last week. His estimator sent him a revised estimate for the renovations and Butler building, and he's gonna meet with him and provide us with an update as soon as possible.
Thank you. Moving along to new business, council committee reports, finance, Councilwoman Neff.
I think not much else to say beyond what I mentioned before on the small ticket items. So the finance committee has had some discussions about that. I would expect that in the coming months, we're gonna be discussing the budget. You know, I think you know, we'll have a lot of things to talk about with council as far as how we're gonna manage expenses next year. I think I also heard from our auditor in the last meeting that you know, just kind of lay low on expenses, and I think I heard debt and interest payments on debt. You know, this is a time to buckle down and cut back. Unfortunately for us, I think the path that Fairhaven is in is different. We have very heavy needs for new or renovated buildings, and I think it goes directly against exactly what our auditor said to keep our debt down. So I think we're not going to be short of some fairly tough decisions in the coming months, and I would expect the finance committee will just be discussing that and trying to bring some suggestions to the council.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Personnel, Councilwoman Christner Keefe, and if you have anything on Parks and Rec, I think we lost Councilwoman Koch.
Sure. On personnel, we are appointing a tax and finance office assistant tonight and looking forward to her joining us. In terms of Parks and Rec, we have two fun upcoming events. On Friday, December 9th is Santa in the Park and the Holiday Stroll through the Business Association. Oh, I'm forgetting one. I'm gonna backtrack in a minute. So that is December 9th. December 18th is the menorah lighting in the park. And the Trolley and Business Association Saturday, which we participate in generally with chiming in on the trolley, is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. The date's escaping me, but the 26th. Thank you. The trolley is running from 1 to 4. It's really fun day.
11 to 4.
Oh, 11 to 4. The trolley's running 11 to 4. I had 1 to 4. Look at that. Expanded hours. 11 to 4. I better change my calendar.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Moving along to police, fire, and OEM, engineering and DPW, Councilman McHugh.
Nothing really to report, Mayor, just that call out from the fire department and fire police regarding the budget and that upcoming cost down the road. Engineering, DPW, happy to accept pending. I don't have the, which one?
The bid award?
2022, 230, the bid award for phase 2 3rd Street. Excited to get that paved.
Entirely with grant money as well.
Right.
Yeah, bid came in.
Well, under,
Much lower than we thought.
Yeah.
it was awesome. I hope, hopefully the bid comes out true. Those applicants are already making clerical errors. We'll see what happens, but yeah. Leave it to the pour in the concrete. All right, so that's the big update right there. Obviously, Hanson Road was discussed, and Rich is busy with other micro projects and planning.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Moving on to Borough Communications and Community Outreach, Councilman Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. I did get a text from Betsy. If you'd like, I can convey that at her request.
Sure.
Planning board's next meeting is tomorrow night, 7:30. The zoning board will be meeting on December 1st, 7:15, and that will be in person. And Councilwoman Christner Keefe, you covered the Parks and Rec piece. Outreach and communications, I would take a moment to recognize the AV equipment as part of our hybrid platform and expanded new and improved hybrid platform. And if we could, Elson, I know you're busy, but if you could give us quickly, what can we expect in the way of the AV capacities of these monitors? And we'll say, for example, when Bonnie and Mark were presenting, how would those materials be on the monitors for the folks at home? Is that even possible?
It is. They could either give a thumb drive, or if they emailed in advance their plans, I can pull it up and share screen from there. This screen over here is your share screen. If I move it, go back to just my notes for it. So this is going to be the share screen dedicated. This is my private. I'm taking notes and monitoring. Same for planning and zoning. Sandy, we're logging in, myself, Christy Larson for environmental shade tree, and Sandy for the land use boards. We're logging in like we're at our desk. Okay. So it's going through our server, and we're able to access, so we can grab an email if somebody said, I just emailed something to you, and we can display it if council of the body at the dais request that. He did connect microphones, but they interfere with the owl, so it was recommended we just go with the owl. Then you have to monitor the microphones, so you're constantly making sure things are on, but that's an emergency backup should be ever needed.
Thank you. And I would just ask if anyone, the governing body, I have not continued to get feedback from people that they can't hear, which was the thing I was getting a lot of. The people who come to speak from the public, or if the chief stands up in the back of the room, that they can't hear that. But I don't know if there've been improvements to the owl or something, but I'm not getting that kind of feedback anymore. So but we welcome the feedback if in fact people are unable to hear from any other part of the room, we would want to know. So
I'm checking my email on my phone in case.
Okay, good.
I can't hear, but
let us
except for
know.
Betsy.
That's right. So the Outreach and Communications Committee is meeting tomorrow. We're going to be looking to take a couple of big moves. We hope to be able to compile a volunteer manual. One of the final pieces of that is a sort of cheat sheet for processing payments and things of that nature. We ran into a lot this year. Teresa's going to give us some help with a quick overview, and that'll be included in a kind of bundle or go-to resource for volunteers. We're also going to be putting together sort of a year in review to be able to bring to this body, and also a look ahead for 2023 goals. So we're going to dig into that at our next meeting tomorrow.
That's Wednesday.
Wednesday. Thank you. I would like to just make sure that every member of the governing body did see that the Environmental Commission sent a memo reflecting their full support of the 3rd Street Trail. That was in your packet. They did a good job working with the folks who've been on the ground for that project, and we're very supportive. In fact, pledged some of the remaining budget to support the efforts to purchase soil. Similarly, there's a De Normandy memo. I'll wait till that's actually on the agenda, which it isn't tonight, but that they also undertook a nice examination with the help of Nick Borchinski of that project. The green team is really showing up in Atlantic City tomorrow to take a bow on behalf of Fairhaven for their silver sustainable jersey acknowledgement. They'll be at the league meeting in Atlantic City representing Fairhaven. Also just a nod to the anti-idling ribbon cutting at Millwood, and the terrific young kids at Millwood, the new Millwood Green Team. I know the mayor and Sean were there to support the kids. The Shade Tree Commission, obviously, I think you've all seen a memo having to do with the tree inventories. It's an ambitious goal they have. They'd like to know what our position is on this. There's more to talk about, but look for more of that in the future. And some people may know that there's going to be true tree pruning on River Road. And what gives me comfort is that the County Shade Tree Commission will be very heavily involved in making sure that the trees, which do need to be trimmed, they're very low over the sidewalk, are going to be carefully and properly. I think they're going to show us how to do it right. Look, we've all seen it done wrong, right?
And we did send that out to residents today.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen here at Fairhaven. So
It's also county funded, so it's a good opportunity for county money to come back to us.
and lastly, on Shop Small Saturday, which hope to come out, it's a great chance to come see our local businesses. They make it really fun. The trolley is going to run 11 to 4, and Historic Association of Fairhaven is hosting a holiday open house at Bicentennial Hall. You'll be able to get off the trolley, not right in front of Bicentennial Hall, but on River Road, and walk down Cedar to come check it out. There'll be some information about the history of Bicentennial Hall at Fairhaven. That's it.
Can I ask you a question, real quick, Councilwoman? For communications and outreach, I've kind of brought this up before. I don't mean to be a stickler, but I think it's kind of important. The Nixle, we Office of Emergency Management managed 2+ years state of emergency, and we try to really not to blast residents with emergency information. We didn't want to instill fear for various reasons, right? And it's been the policy to just use it for emergency. And then I saw in the focus that it's now, what did it say?
The tree pruning.
The Nixle can, for emergency and non-emergency information, so a policy has changed. Yeah, if you go back to 10/9/2018. Okay, so you remember you said the Nixle is used for emergency. If we post projects and the like on the Nixle, the public will not pay attention if there were a true emergency.
Right, we don't want to overutilize it.
Don't want to overuse it. And I personally kind of subscribe to that. And then, we have various other ways of communication. Residents have kind of brought to me a couple weeks ago, there's a lot of e-blast with changes in the garden club location and just kind of turning into a nuisance. So I kind of want to get ahead of that. I don't want people to not sign up for the Nixle. But then again, I want them to know what they're signing up for.
Yeah. Is there a
So
policy
I
to-
don't think so. I mean, I'm looking back, and I understand what you're saying. If you're constantly getting information, maybe you're not paying attention to it as much. But I mean, I go back to 2020, we have a New Jersey Devils bus trip. We have a notice about the limited use of plastic bags, polystyrene foam containers, and plastic straws. The borough hired licensed tree expert Zig Panic to assess the trees on Butterwood Drive.
these were Nixles.
Yeah,
Do you want
they're all
us to
coming
take
to
it
the
up?
same.
Like,
I
as a
think we should
policy
just
matter?
set like a criteria.
Maybe we discuss this tomorrow.
Sure.
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Wednesday, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, I did think that was the case, and I have seen the communications you're talking about. I didn't know that there was a formal policy. I just always associated it with public announcements of an urgent or public safety matter. So, but there hasn't been a policy discussion. at
It wasn't
that
formal as
region.
much written, it was more just, generally speaking, we just didn't want to overuse it to the point of where people.
So why don't we take it up?
You put it on the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great. Just to
Okay.
like set some criteria.
okay.
So people know what it is. That'd be great. Thanks.
Introduction of ordinances, we're going to 2022-17, amend police special duty assignment rate. Does anyone have any questions on that? No, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Chris McKee,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to the consent agenda. Does anyone first want to separate anything on the consent agenda?
I have just a very straightforward question on one, if I may, and if you
Sure.
don't need to separate it. On the Third Street bid, Teresa, can you tell us exactly where the Third Street work? Because I know some of the drawings that I'm glad we have, and for the intersection at Hanson and Third, we shall then come back to it, but where exactly is that project going to end relative to Hanson?
Although Rich isn't gonna do, I believe he'll pave, when he's talking about doing a road project with paving, he'll pave into as far as he can to make the drainage work. But there won't be any of the upgrades we talked about for Hans, whether it was on the crosswalks or expanding, making that, radius change. All of that would have to come off of a separate project. It wasn't tied to this.
Thank you, that was my question.
Wait, the radius change isn't?
That will not be
On
part of this. You know how he was gonna, tighten that up? So it make, that would not be part of this.
Anyone else want to separate anything? on the consent? Anyone have any other questions on the consent agenda? No, does anyone have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call, 2022-225 through 232?
Councilmembers Chris McKee,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Thank you. Department reports, October 2022. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Good of the borough, please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please observe a time limit of 3 minutes if you can.
Hi, Karen Ferguson, 7 Colonial Court. I'd just like to speak about the fence ordinance a little bit. I will write this down and submit it, but I hope it will be considered as a possibility. The crux of the issue is that if you have a corner lot, your side yard is considered your front yard. So the rules for the front yard apply there, and you can't have a security fence, a 12 fence. What I would like us to consider is that when your property is adjacent to a auto service station or a shopping center, that your side yard doesn't have to be considered a front yard. And I think that would basically address the problem that we're encountering at least. Our ordinances do include a definition of a shopping center. It has to be over 20,000 square feet. So there is only one property in town that meets that. So like, it's not opening it up to this giant impact. It's just the 3 corner lots on Smith Street. Even the other Foreman or whatever it is behind the Acme, there's no corner lots there. So we're really talking about 3 houses that really, in my opinion, are entitled to security and privacy from being next to a gas station or a shopping center, where the mechanicals and the operations are literally right there, like within 20 feet of the edge of your property. Councilwoman Neff, you mentioned what would it look like with all the 10 fences? What I would like people to observe is what it looks like without the 10 fence, without the big fences. Adjacent, the property across from ours is abuts the service station. What they've done is put in something which is legal, which is a huge wall of legal cypresses. They're probably 15 to 20 feet tall. They're very wide, and they're considered by everyone on our street to be a safety hazard. But that's legal. It would be much improved if they weren't there and we could just have a 6-foot fence there. We could see beyond it when we come to the corner. You know, people turn off River Road and drive fast up Smith Street. And when you're pulling out of Colonial Court, you can't see that because this wall of trees. So, you know, the ordinances have unintended effects, right? If you can't put up a fence, you're going to find something else to put up. That's what everyone would do. So we have to expect that. The fence is actually probably much more desirable than this giant wall of trees. There was a discussion of like, how expensive is it to enter the variance process? We did get a code violation for our fence, and the estimate from the town was $2,800 just to enter the variance process. After that, you don't know what will happen. You may be turned down. You may have to provide other materials at other expenses. We do pay escrow to pay for the borough professionals in that case, and that's what some of that cost covers. So, you know, it seems like there's a very specific case that could be added into the ordinances, as Mike Irene suggested, that would benefit the people in this situation on this street. So I will write this down, send it to you separately.
Can I also make the recommendation, and I've told you I empathize with the situation in general, but I'm gonna lean a lot on the zoning recommendations that I get. So I would recommend also that you put your thoughts down and send them to them as well, for them to consider as part of their process in determining what they should do. Because I think hearing from a resident, it's a board made up of residents as well. I think they'll similarly empathize with your situation and help them craft something that maybe works for the borough and for you personally.
Okay.
If you send it to the mayor council, I'll make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then you guys have alluded once in a while to maybe there would be a fast track through the zoning board and stuff. You know, the restaurant committee prepared a large report with about 10 different recommendations, and there was action on one of them, but there's still a lot of other stuff in there that like needs action or review. One of them was that there's an exempt development ordinance.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the intention of that. And it's in very poor shape. It's really almost unreadable. And one of the recommendations of the restaurant committee was to review that and improve it. So I think that would still be very worthwhile to be done. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Carolyn. Is there anyone else in the public that has a comment?
I have a small tidbit to go to the world.
Before you go, Allison, is there anyone?
We have two hands up. Mrs.
Close it out.
Blazer. Mrs. Blazer. can speak.
Hi, Ruth.
Good evening.
How are you?
Well, I'm a little puzzled. The streetlights at the west end of Streetscape have gone on. They're rather interesting. The other thing being the finishing of Streetscape, I was assured that my plantings and rocks were going to be restored, and I've heard nothing from anybody, to the point that because some of the rocks were thrown on my front lawn, I started to put them back in myself. And I just, in the process of doing this, have figured out I'm not going to have enough to put it back the way it was, assuming I have the time and the energy to do that. So that's sort of in limbo at this point. I believe it is up to you folks to take care of this. Other than that, River Road is very nice. It's nice and smooth, and people love to speed. I don't care what the speed limit says, they're still speeding. So, and they're also ignoring the brush and limb schedule. And nobody seems to be cognizant of that. I had offered at one time to give the chief enough notebooks and pens so that when our esteemed police force went around town, they could make note of people who were in violation of these things, and he turned me down flatly. So you really should not rely on the residents to rat on their neighbors. I mean, that's not fair. That's not fair. My other suggestion is, if you haven't gone any further on what you're going to do with the police station, I would like to suggest, keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood, that you go up a story and incorporate the library into the building. It is more centrally located in town. There is better parking. And I just think if you have the community center, the library, the police department, everything in one building, it would just work out a lot better. On that note, I would also like the police station open 24 hours a day, because somebody's getting paid to be on duty and they should be in the police station serving the residents of the town. You can't plan your emergencies between 9 and 2 every day. The other thing being, if you can move the meetings back into a community center at that location, it's far better than Bicentennial Hall, because there's virtually no parking to get into Bicentennial Hall. There are now 3 or 4 steps that have to be climbed by the seniors when we have our meetings. And for some, it's a challenge. And if for some reason we cannot use the parking spaces closest to Bicentennial Hall in the Acme parking lot, it's a long walk. It really is. You folks have a parking problem. So maybe we should go back to the drawing board on some of these things. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. The only one, Teresa, I want to follow up on is, do you know if Rich is done with his punch list?
I'm not familiar with what she's talking about as far as rocks and plantings go. I mean, I'd have to, I made a note of it, but I have no
Can
idea.
you ask Rich tomorrow, please? And we'll get back to you, Mrs. Blazer, on that. Is there anyone else? Allison?
Peter Nachesney?
Hello, Peter.
Good evening, guys, Mayor, Council. Tonight, and this is kind of a thing that I saw come up in Seabright actually, and actually tonight they're having public hearing on a new ordinance that they want to introduce regarding minimum stay for things like Airbnb, VRBO. It's not a problem that we have and we're not being reactionary to it, but I'm wondering if this is something that we should think about doing in town. Currently, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 properties, but we've had a lot of new turnover in real estate the last couple of years, and I'm thinking maybe it's something we want to get out ahead of. Seabright actually had a 3-day minimum they were going to recommend, and at the last meeting, they extended it to 7 days. And I think it would do a bit, I mean, it's a low impact thing for us to put in place. And I think we could actually set some rules as far as what's going to happen going forward. Any thoughts on that?
I actually think it's a good recommendation. It's not something I've discussed with anyone in the past, but I think it would be smart to get ahead of it.
I appreciate that you brought it up.
Sure.
We have a property that does it in Red Bank, and the adjacent property has, whatever the permission is, they're allowed to VRBO their stuff, their property. And it has created problems. Not that it's inherently a problem, just, you know, when it turns into a party house, that's a problem. So I think that's.
Yeah, that way we don't have to get reactionary if somebody has a problem, then we have, you know, oh, you're
Yeah.
being against me type thing. If we do it before there's a problem, it'd be a lot more easy to stomach, I think anyhow.
It's good, it's good thought.
Great. I think that's a great
Todd and I
suggestion.
spoke about it a couple of days ago, and we think it's something we could get in front of. Also, one thing I want to point out, for Shop Small Saturday, the Columbus Club is providing a space for local businesses that may not have a storefront or people that sell online. So if anybody, you know, has interest in displaying there, we are going to be a stop on the trolley. So Columbus Club 07704@gmail.com.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Peter.
Quickie, Slope Brook Farm, is that who takes our leaves now? So it looks like we've paid for maybe 2 rounds. I'm not sure if this is right. $1,240 so far in leaf removal.
There's a voucher in here right now for that,
Well,
tonight that I signed.
yeah, I mean, really putting it over on the trail would save us those fees, or just connecting costs to project goals. Look forward to being good stewards. Yeah.
Allison, anyone else on the Zoom?
Peter, I think just raised his hand again.
Okay.
Oh,
Peter?
yeah, sorry, my bad. I'm lowering. Sorry, it was a mistake there.
No worries. Anyone else?
No one else.
All right. That being said, we have an adjournment at 9:31 PM. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Yes.
I don't feel we can see that. Yeah, that's great. So good.